One night, a narcotics sergeant called me and says, I need 2 of your best people for a takedown. I told him, I said, his name's JJ. I said, JJ, can you make that traffic stop on another division? Because I don't really have 2 of the best for what you're wanting to do. And that was a slight on me. I should have spent more time training. That's what leaders do, is they make sure, just like a coach would, make sure your people have the right equipment, the right training, the right mindset.
Welcome back, Blue Grit podcast listeners, followers, warriors. I am your host, Tyler Owen.
And Clinton McNear.
What's going on?
Just finished Thanksgiving, a little bit fatter, a little fuller.
It was a good weekend. It was a good weekend. You've had right now, is for those listeners that do not reside in Texas, football is still king here, and we are happy to announce that Clint's son they're in the playoffs, and so we're hoping to bring home a state title to the Forney community.
5AD1, we are about 4 rounds deep, 4 rounds deep.
It's the furry jackrabbits?
The fighting jackrabbits.
I'm sorry, the
fighting jackrabbits.
Fighting jackrabbits. That's 5A1 District 2? Or District 1?
Yeah, yes.
I think District 2. I think.
Something.
Yeah. So
whatever
anyway,
it takes.
Maybe when this episode
2x4, 2x6.
yeah. When this episode comes out, they'll the fighting jackrabbits will be state champions.
Yes. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. We've made the transition down to Wimberley. And Thanksgiving in my family has always kind of traditionally been more of a party with the family, and we all get together. And so my cousin made the trip from Powderly, which is up near Paris, and my mom and dad came down, and it was a great Thanksgiving. We hung out and did our thing. So he got to see Fredericksburg on Saturday. And,
oh, cool.
Never been to the Hill Country, so we just we Hill Country'd it up, man.
That's what I'm talking about.
It was great. Good times.
Who do we got?
We have El Presidente, former Tmpa president, past president, I should say, James Babb, who is we've been wanting you to come on for a while now.
We've been wanting you for a while now.
We have been wanting you for a while.
I like it when you put it that way.
Yeah. How you been?
Been great, man.
Welcome to the Blue Grit stage, dude.
Indeed, this is impressive.
What were you saying earlier? What you want to repeat about the room?
It's really nice. It's much smaller than what you see in that camera.
It's smaller, okay. yeah.
Nice shot that every guest gives, and they show up here.
Right.
I really expected it to be a lot larger in person.
Yeah.
Hey, if you'll extend me a little latitude real quick.
Yeah.
Because I've been a listener, a watcher, a voyeur of pretty much every episode. And until today, before we started, and I got to see Clint out there laying down that bass line that you hear in the beginning, with the picture montage, and then he just calmly stashed that bass on the side of the room. It's amazing. Nothing short of amazing. I'm not going to say he's this cool, but I've heard that he pees ice cubes.
Oh my God, this is great.
I got nothing. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today. That's a wrap. Appreciate you having us on here.
Yeah, you have been a loyal listener. Are you a listener or a watcher?
It depends on where I am.
Depends on where you are.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll turn it on in the car because they drop just about the time I'm headed into work.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if I get to work, then I'll pop it up on the old computer and watch it.
Well, for you listeners out there is the YouTube channel, and that's what we typically push on social media platforms. And it has some great stories. This is the episode we had with Lieutenant Colonel Darling. The B-roll over that, so you can kind of visually see what we're talking about. So it's just YouTube's a really good platform, and we're starting to kind of get the hang of it just a little bit. But for you watchers, we're also on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and those links are on our website. So.
Comment down below if you're a watcher or a listener. I'm curious because I'm a visual person, and I fall asleep audio only. So like even when I'm driving, I have YouTube going just because. If I'm watching somebody, Joe Rogan's guest, I just want to see what they look like.
But you're paying attention to the roadway.
I'm watching the roadway.
For you motor jocks out there that just got excited for saying that. I'm trying to defend you.
And I just got insurance again, and my license isn't suspended anymore, just FYI.
Looking out for you, big dog.
Let us comment below if you're a watcher or listener. I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you came on today. You're going to be co-hosting with us. You recommended this guy, and who also was recommended by Joe King, by the ATO.
The Joe King.
Yeah, shout out Joe King.
And so,
sexiest man in Dallas.
Well, yeah, shout out to Joe King for throwing me under the bus on Friday, but that's a whole nother So
That'd be a good B-roll. We could roll.
It would be a
him.
good
Yes.
B-roll.
Yeah.
I will put that in the deal right today.
So today with us is Keith Wenzel. Keith has 30 years with Dallas,
Well, 32 active and 10 reserve.
and he is or was with Calibre Press for many years and is an absolutely phenomenal instructor. When I took over as president, the instructions I gave for the training were, if Keith Wenzel is available, you book him, and then here's your backups.
Yeah.
And luckily, he was able to make it. So,
And that was which conference was that you were?
In Houston about five
20
or 6 years ago.
2017.
Okay. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, man, we usually kick off where you got started at, how you got started in law enforcement, who the hell are you, and where you grew up, and let's dive off into it.
Well, I'm 67 years old, so this could take a while.
It could take a while.
But I'm a
Start with
streamline.
day one, and let's just cover every day.
Okay.
we had one guest start at conception. We would not like to hear that again. So if you want to start off with where you
At birth, not conception. Just start at birth.
Yeah.
Well, I did grow up in the Dallas area, Carrollton, went to high school there. Went to the Marine Corps after high school.
Hoorah.
3 year
Oh,
hoorah.
God.
Well, that's always great.
You knew this
yeah.
going into
Okay,
this?
Yeah.
shut it down.
Yeah,
Shut
you
it
knew
down.
that. You
Yeah.
knew that going into this.
I had forgotten that fact, to be honest with you. That's why we put them on that side of the table.
Yeah, that's
Natalie, you can just keep the camera over here, and we'll just cut
Yeah.
to this shot, and we don't need to.
Yep.
It is sad that everybody's jealous, aren't they? Yeah. Did my 3 years and always wanted to, even my mother always said that I wanted to be a policeman when I grew up, and obviously I attained that goal. When I got out of the Marines, I went to work, believe it or not, in Carrollton as a community service officer. Now, I wasn't 21 yet. Went to college, was working at Carrollton as a civilian community service officer. When I turned 21, I applied in Irving, got hired, and worked there from about 78 to middle of 82. Always wanted to be a Dallas police officer. When I was in Carrollton as a community service officer, they let me go to the Dallas Police Reserve Academy on my own time. And naturally, as a 20-year-old, I jumped at that and had that desire to go back to Dallas Police. So in 82, I applied to Dallas, and that was the start of my Dallas police career. And it lasted from 82 until 2013, retired, and went to work for Calibre Press full-time and continued teaching until I moved down to the Georgetown area in about 2016, 2017.
About how long was the academy back then?
Well, I went to the Sheriff's Academy first, and it was literally about 8 or 9 weeks. The Dallas Police Academy was about 13 weeks.
Dallas County Sheriff's Office?
Dallas County Sheriff's Office, yes.
I got you.
And the Dallas Police Academy was about 13 weeks, I believe. A lot different than it is today.
So it was split. It was split. The academies were split. Is that?
Well, no, I went to the Sheriff's Academy for Irving, so I was already certified. But when you hire in Dallas, you're going to go to their police academy. So that was in 82.
So you got a twofold. I got you.
And including the reserve. The reserve was about 6 months, but, it's just like 2 nights a week and some Saturdays.
At what point did DP, and you may not be able to comment on this or not, but we had Lick Lighter. I had a Lick Lighter as the FTO.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Great
Great
guy.
guy.
Outstanding.
All the production that DPD did. I do videos for Tmpa, and I couldn't imagine doing that stuff, full time. And it looked like it was, they're basically movies, essentially. Yes. Was that back in your prime of when you went to the academy?
Actually, it was. Now, they didn't do too many when I first started, but within about 2 to 3 years, Licklider was up at the academy as a corporal, and he was putting out videos. And I went back to the academy as a class advisor. And so there's some of the videos that you can still pull up probably that, I was kind of a trainer, helper or something like that. But, yeah, they did a great job putting those videos out.
It is.
Classics.
Yeah, they were. They were really good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the other guy. Who's the other one, the other 80s style training videos that?
Well, John Smith was in there, Corporal John Smith, Licklider. Let's see. That was before the Tom Popkins and others. Yeah.
And I was only born in 84. So.
Well, when you said what other 80s films were out there, I could see James Babbs like, Ron Jeremy? No, not Ron Jeremy.
Oh, shit.
I see where this is going.
So, yeah. So
Let me check my bookmarks. I can probably.
Yeah.
So let's back up a quick sec. Growing up in Carrollton, your mom told you kind of always wanted to be a police officer.
Yeah.
Was there interaction with law enforcement? Was there a family member Did you just remember seeing Carrollton officers and thinking, man, I'd like to do that someday?
Believe it or not, I did. I babysat for a Carrollton officer, and my mother worked with his wife. And so my interaction with Carrollton, I did have some. Bill Fuller I think he was a sergeant then, and I went to school with his son, Billy Fuller. So I did know some police officers, and of course in Carrollton, it wasn't very big back then.
Right.
Trust me. You got to know the police officers if you drove a car. And so, I was, I would say, a good kid. I got caught quite a bit, but I was a good kid.
Yeah.
Good at getting caught.
Good at getting caught, yes. So I had an interaction. I will tell you this real quick story, though. My best friend, Mike, we were in a car with a couple girls. We met on Forest Lane, and I didn't know it, but he didn't have a driver's license that he could drive at night. And I know that sounds funny, but it was a provisional at the time.
Yep.
And the police, he had a headlight out, and the police turned around, and he took off. And it was the first police chase I've ever been in the back seat. And he missed a turn on a road that said County Road, and we hit the sign and didn't do too much damage, but the police came up, and I learned their techniques very quickly. And it was a lot different in about 1973 than it is today. And I was pulled, when they say out of the vent window, well, there was a small window in the back, but I swear I came out of it.
That's awesome.
It was great.
Pre-felony stop.
At that point, I did want to be a policeman really, really bad.
And I got asked this the other day. I don't know where we were at, but for those that don't know where Carrollton is, that if you're not listening or in Texas, it's just it's a suburb of Dallas, north of Dallas, maybe 5 or 6 miles. I mean, it butts up to the city limits of Dallas. At that point, when you grew up, probably a very, I wouldn't say small town, but it was probably 20 or 30,000 population at that point.
Barely, probably.
And
yes.
now it's pushing 160, 200 plus, I would think. So just to kind of give you a correlation of for you listeners out there.
So no law enforcement in your family?
None.
What was your MOS in the Marine Corps?
1141, and this sounds weird, but I was by trade an electrician. But when I was sent to an air wing, I worked on a catapult where we launched airplanes. We trained pilots on a catapult system to go out to ships so they could land and take off on a catapult.
So like the slingshot thing you see
yeah.
from Top Gun.
Yeah, it was in California. There was only 2 of them at that time on the East Coast and West Coast. And so every pilot, probably west of Mississippi, had to come to El Toro to be trained and go through the catapult, and then he'd go out on a ship.
So no LE in the Marine Corps.
No.
Was it during the time in the Marine Corps where you thought, okay, my end of active service is coming up, I'm going to do the police thing, or did you get out of the Marine Corps and still trying to figure out what you wanted to do?
No, I still wanted, even in the Marine Corps, the uniform, the discipline, the whole process was something I was attracted to. So, yes. And ironically, I know that's probably the wrong word, but I got married when I was 18. I married my high school sweetheart, Suzanne. We dated all through high school. And so after boot camp and after my training, we got married, and so we lived in California. Naturally, we wanted to come back to Texas as soon as we could, and there wasn't a base in Texas for Marines.
Very good. So you get back home, end of active service, get out of the Marine Corps, hit Carrollton how old are you at the time?
I'm 20 years old.
So, and back then you could be a cop, just couldn't buy bullets, but you apply at Carrollton and become a community service officer?
Right. Carrollton had a 4-year degree at that time. And
no kidding? Yes. All the way back then they did?
All the way back then.
Damn.
Wow.
So I knew I wouldn't have a 4-year degree for several years. I was, using the GI Bill, going to college.
Yeah.
But the desire to be a policeman at 21 was far greater than waiting in Carrollton for the 4-year degree.
And what year was that?
78.
Wow, I did not know anybody was requiring a 4-year
We had
degree in the
just
70s.
discussed this last episode. That's going to be debuting shortly about the benefits of having degrees versus not. And you, looking back on it now, I'm sure Carrollton wished they would have probably waived that with your great career. You going on to teach for Calibre Press. I mean, it's just a testament really of sometimes, requirements should be taken into consideration over experience.
Well, I was young, and we all look back and say, at 21, was I really that mature to be a policeman? Yeah. And looking back, it's easy to say I wasn't. At the time, of course, naturally, I thought I was. Yeah. But I do believe college or military both give you that discipline, and that it's good to have.
Work experience, too.
I'm 51, and Tyler said I'm not mature enough to be a cop, so.
I said that?
It hurt my feelings.
Yeah. Well, I've been accused of the same thing.
Bad wants to weigh in on this. I can see it in his face.
Well, I'm the only one still carrying a badge, and I know I'm still not there. But I keep telling them I'm gonna keep showing up until I find a real job.
Yeah, there you go.
I thought you were until I got that picture sent to me by Joe King.
Is it going to go right here?
No, it's going to go the full screen.
Oh, okay.
Full screen.
Centerfold.
I'm going to do it every time.
I want to play the QR code game. Is it going to go right here?
We call it a centerfold.
Yeah, exactly. So, dive off into Carrollton. So you're working there. You go to DPD. Where'd you obviously start off in patrol?
Sure.
And then where'd your career kind of end up at DPD?
You know, I loved, and this goes back to the TV show Adam 12. I just loved patrol.
Yeah.
And so I spent, the first, 7 years or so working patrol, Northwest Division. Even in patrol, you could do other things. We had a deployment squad, so it's kind of an undercover covert squad. I did that for a couple times in a couple years. This sounds strange, but I never had the desire to be on the SWAT team. And of course, back then it was called tactical. Right. But now it's called SWAT. But my best friend, Joey Fox, went, and several officers from Northwest had transferred to the SWAT team.
Real quick, if you can kind of give the listener, the viewer, an idea of where Northwest it was then when you were there, where that division, the boundaries were.
Okay, everything north of I-30 and everything east pretty much of Stemmons, but a little bit further, like maybe the tollway, okay? And like the Harry Hines, Bachman Lake, that area, Love Field, was all Northwest.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was there, probably 4 channels back then? Northeast, Northwest, Southeast? South?
5. There were 5. And then somewhere probably about, 86, 87, created the North Central, and that took some of the Northwest Division away.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, how was that special unit working back then, especially in the 80s? And
we were called the Tennis Shoe Squad. It was crazy. A great time to do proactive policing. We had a lot of things that we did, watch burglars that we knew were burglars and do surveillance and just a lot. It wasn't dope focused, but it surrounded dope a lot.
What shift would that look like when you show up to work, and give us kind of a detail of how that would look working that?
Some things are still under the okay. We had rent-a-junks, and we'd come to work, whether you worked evenings or we had 2 squads, days and evenings. About 4 of us worked, and we had different ideas of what we were looking for. Stolen cars were great. If patrol found a stolen car, we'd sit up on it, wait till it got occupied, and the patrol guys loved that. Our lieutenant accused us one time of manufacturing crime, where we had an old pickup truck. We'd put the hood up and put tires in the back, and back then, reaching in the back of a pickup truck was a felony. And we got some tires from a tire dealer. The first set we got, the suspects stole them, and the chase didn't last very long, but they got away, and we lost the tires. And one of the officers who knew the guy at the tire store, we went back, and this time he gave us some old tires cleaned up with stickers on them, because it didn't matter what the value of the tires were. Yeah. It just mattered that they reached in. We had boxes in that said tools. There were no tools in it. There were bricks. TV boxes that said TVs, but there were no TVs in it. But we'd put that hood up and sit back on it in a smooth car, and with the squad cars would sit hidden somewhere. And of course, as soon as somebody grabbed those boxes, it was chase on.
It was on.
It was on.
And we're talking about old school eyes on surveillance, not some of the stuff that we get to do now.
Yeah.
Like,
the word old school, I was accused the other day of being old school, and I said, no, I think I'm Old Testament. Okay, there's a difference.
It's funny you're here and this is being talked about. I think you and I were together several months ago, and I did not know this, but the first piece of legislation that Tmpa was a part of happened to be burglary of a motor vehicle. And you mentioned reaching inside the bed of the truck. Yeah. Was it a felony then? You said
it was.
So, that was Tmpa's monumental piece of legislation, apparently, was burglary of a motor vehicle. Theft from a vehicle, or theft from parked vehicle, or something, however it was worded way back then, when Bab was 2, a young lad. Sorry.
But I think it was breaking the plane.
Breaking the plane.
Yeah. So if you break the plane from the bed of the truck, technically you entered the vehicle.
Yeah.
Was that great?
So the chief back then, probably Prince? Billy Prince?
Prince initially, yes. Okay.
Was a great chief.
It was great chief. Yeah. They supported law enforcement back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Just a little bit different.
Administrations, community, everybody supported the police back then. They wanted the bad guys caught.
yes.
So work deployment, where to from that? That was at Northwest working
That
deployment?
was Northwest. Well, as I told you, a good friend went to SWAT, and every day would call and say, "This is the greatest job in the world."
Does Dallas issue hair gel when you go to SWAT, or do you have to buy your own?
At that time, it was the hair dryers, the longer hair. It was fashionable.
The product was
yes.
issued, hair product issued at the time?
And hair dryers.
Excellent.
Yeah, and we got to use the bathroom alone. Patrol wasn't, you know how that goes. You know? Yeah. All those ribbing, so of course I interviewed, got the position, and spent about 5 years on the SWAT team.
Very nice.
From about 88 to 93 when I made sergeant.
Beepers were probably not even around then. So what would that look like when you were on call? I mean, how would that work?
Well, and somebody put on Facebook the other day a long article about the equipment we had and the things that, we had vests that had Velcro that was so worn out. It was given to us by the military, and
right.
that you had to actually hold the straps together with one hand while you held your either shotgun or we had MP5s at that time. I don't know if they still make that weapon, but that's what we had. No helmets. We eventually got some helmets. So if you were the rookie on the squad, when you had to look in the attic, guess who stuck their head up in the attic first?
Yeah.
It was so nice getting somebody new on the squad. Trust me. just that peekaboo up in the attic was scary as all get out, and without a helmet. And we actually took PVC pipe and made a flashlight holder so that we could stick a flashlight up. We didn't have any equipment like you're thinking today where you have microphones. We had radios, those big brick radios. It was pretty basic. But quite frankly, we did a really good job.
Yeah.
And what years on SWAT was that?
About 88 through 93.
Is that going to be pre-Claggett?
It was, you know what? Claggett may have come right about the time I left, but he was in narcotics before he went to
That's right.
the SWAT team.
Dallas SWAT is kind of like the Bible, right? It's like the Old Testament is pre-Claggett.
Yeah.
Everything else is.
It's a New Testament.
Yeah.
I got you.
I will give him some credit. When I taught around the country, people would come up and say, "Hey, this Claggett, do you know him?" I say, "Yeah, I know him." "Was he really that good?" And I say, "He was probably half as good as he thought he was, but that's pretty good to begin with."
Yeah.
There has been some incredible guys come through Dallas SWAT.
I'll agree with that.
A lot of incredible guys have come through Dallas SWAT. They've been fortunate.
Well, and of course, some of them are still training around the country
Yeah.
right now. So that's a testament to the training in Dallas Police Department.
Yep. Where to from there?
I made sergeant in 93, and I tell you this funny story. I took the test. I didn't study, and I should have, but I didn't. But I passed it with the lowest score you could get passing. And then we had the assessment center, and I had a part-time job that day that I was going to the assessment center, and I almost didn't go because at the hotel, that whole day you had to stay sequestered. So I was the first group in at like 7 o'clock. I wouldn't get out of there till 2 o'clock, and I thought, I am not sitting here all day long being at the bottom of the list. But I'm jokingly going to say this, but going through the assessment center, apparently I bullshitted somebody. Can you say that word?
Oh,
you can.
Yeah. That BS came out pretty good.
We prefer it.
So I did go to the assessment center. I did pass it very well and climbed up on the list and got promoted.
So promoting means you have to leave SWAT?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go back patrol.
Go back to patrol.
Backbone. Where'd you get transferred to?
Southeast is the furthest I lived in Coppell. Suburb
Oh,
of,
wow. That
suburb
puts you
of
on the
Carrollton.
opposite side of the world.
Oh, yeah. And they do that on purpose, I believe. Where does he work? Where does he live? Let's just give him some time to think about it. No.
Yeah. Because we love you. We're doing this for you.
Yeah, for you. Deep nights at Southeast. And 6 months there, I went transferred back to Northwest. Naturally closer to home, obviously. The drive was a killer.
Real quick, can give us the boundaries of Southeast for those that don't know at that point in time, because they've changed over the years.
Okay, somewhere around I-35 east and somewhere around I-30 south. So all the way down to Balk Springs,
Wow.
all the suburb cities. And
We call that area the Devil's Triangle.
yeah.
Sigaville, Balk Springs, Garland.
I've also heard it referred
Pleasant
to
Grove.
as Sillyville.
Yes.
It might be
From
called the
someone that worked there.
Bermuda Triangles.
Yeah, there you go. Pleasant Grove, Seagoville, Garland, Balk Springs, pretty much all crime emanates from.
Yeah.
And you guys talk a lot
Beautiful area.
about leadership on this podcast, and I will tell you, I was promoted to sergeant in 2017, and the guy sitting across the table from me has given me so much on leadership because that's who I would lean on when I.
So this is all your fault?
I apologize.
This is all-
Nationally.
But don't tell him I said anything good about him.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll
Okay,
keep it all
thank you.
secret.
Yeah, you come to some decision making in leadership roles, and when I got stuck, I always had his phone number, and that's one of the first calls I would make when I was struggling.
Wow.
Well, thanks for that compliment. But being a police sergeant was my goal when I got in law enforcement. That was what I wanted to do, and it came from being a Marine. I was actually a Marine sergeant too. I made it in less than 3 years. But the Marine Corps instills that leadership principle of you take care of your people, make decisions. And, police sergeant working the evenings and nights, you have mainly young officers. And it's the biggest challenge there is in leadership to manage young police officers who know very little but are eager to learn. So that was a dream come true.
So at this point at Dallas PD, and we can kind of compare Plano and DPD at that point in time. So on a shift, y'all would show up for briefing, and how many sergeants would be in that sector, lieutenants, and then how many patrol officers would be under you? Or kind of tell us how that would work with Dallas at that point in time.
Well, theoretically, and I'll use Northwest, I had generally about 8 to 10 officers that worked for me. But we might have at least 3 sergeants working at a time. We might go down to 2 very seldom, but 3 sergeants working. Other stations, like I worked at Southwest, I worked at every substation except Northeast. I moved around quite a bit, and I jokingly say a couple not by choice, but most of them were by choice, okay, when we got the bid process. So it depends where you worked. But like Southwest, we had a lot more officers. We had 127 officers on third watch, on the evening shift. We had 13 sergeants. Now, keep in mind, not all of them are going to be there on the same day, rotating days off. So you could have close to 40, 50 officers working and maybe 2 or 3 sergeants working.
Wow.
You stayed busy.
So dissecting the leadership, we had a Marine on a couple weeks ago. Was a lieutenant colonel, flew Marine One, and we talked with him about it. And I'm always curious discussing leadership. And there's the debate about, are you born a leader, or is it something that you can develop and grow? And there's value in both sides of it. But when did Keith know? Was it in the Marines as you became a sergeant that you had some leadership abilities in the communication and charisma to lead people? Or was that something that you made sergeant and they're like, here you go, you're going to have to start figuring out how to lead these crazy-ass Marines around? Or
it has to be a little bit of both. I don't know that people are actually born to be leaders. I mean, that sounds great, but you develop your leadership skills through other people. And, as a young police officer, you're working for different sergeants, you're seeing lieutenants, you're seeing chiefs, you're seeing all kinds of rank, and you cherry pick the good and the bad. And that's what makes you a successful leader eventually. And I don't think anybody, gets promoted on day one and automatically has those skills and ability. It's a developed knack. So
when did you realize you had an aptitude to lead, and it's something when you got in the police department, you said you always wanted to be a patrol sergeant. When in life did you realize I'm a decent example in how to help lead people? When was that?
I'd have to say after I made sergeant, even on the SWAT team, we dealt with a lot of patrol officers, and I always like to take the initiative if they were, like on the perimeter or something, keeping them on the scene as long as possible. Where typically, we'd come in and they'd relieve all the patrol guys. And to me, that's part of leadership, is in influencing others. And being that person, there was always that division between SWAT and everybody else. And it probably still is today. But, through the synergy of dealing with people and enjoying other people. I think that's what makes leadership.
Okay.
And standing up for what's right and wrong at the time, even though it may have an impact on your own personal career. And that's why I go back into being transferred a couple of times. You know, I voiced an opinion as to how things should be. And apparently it wasn't always received as well as I thought it should have been. But a transfer is a transfer.
Got you. El Presidente, when did you...
We need to fix that right away. I'm a has-been.
What did leadership look like for you? When was that you thought, I'm enjoying this. I can do this?
There had been a few scenes where there wasn't any leadership around at the time, so I would take that role. But I will say that the day I got promoted, I came home. My wife was at my promotional ceremony, and I remember sitting on the couch and looking at her and going, now I don't have a choice of, hey, I'll step up and lead here. It's on me. And that hit pretty hard for me. But one of the biggest things, and I think I may have talked to Keith about this, is the shift that I had 9 officers when I got sent back to nights. And if I take one guy out of that equation, I had more experience than all of them put together.
Oh, wow.
So one of the things I didn't realize was how much sleep I would lose over them. Like something happening to them on my watch. That's when leadership really hit me. Like a freight train.
Yep. It's carrying that weight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the things that people don't see, the line level employees that, that may listen to this, that look at their sergeants just as somebody who's going to sign off on a vacation request, or somebody that's going to pull you in and chew your ass out for, messing up on a call, or they don't really take value into, shit, my sergeant really does care about me. And that's probably because the ones that don't shouldn't, but.
And they're out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%.
They're out there.
But, yeah, I think that in my short time of being a leadership, I think that's what I took away from that, was give back and be the leader that I saw people that weren't in my time, just as you said.
Mm-hmm. I don't think, and I was in this boat too. I don't think that the line level folks understand how much people that want to be good leaders agonize over that.
Yeah.
Truly agonize over it and internalize it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Tyler brought up a good point. They think a sergeant just proves a day off or gives them an ass chewing. And we get legal calls sometime of, well, my sergeant got on to me. What can you do about it? Or my lieutenant got on to me or told me I was lazy. What are y'all going to do about it? And it maybe is counterintuitive or just because I'm rough around the edges, but I would rather my sergeant call me in and chew me out and help me fix the problem. Because the easy way out is just to give me a written reprimand or put me on a performance improvement plan or documented counseling that I screwed up or I wrecked, tore a rim off a police car. And I think there's more value in somebody that takes the time to actually call you in and talk to you about it. Because the easy route is type up a quick little memo. I'm going to drop it in your file and you're screwed, and you get a few more of these and you're done. I'd rather you call me in and tell me, hey, man, you've been in 2 wrecks in a month, you moron. Slow down a little bit. I love you and you're doing a good job, but freaking slow down, you idiot. You're going to kill yourself. I find more value in that. It may hurt my pride for a moment, but I would appreciate that from a leader rather than a quick memo going, one more wreck and you're done, fool.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, when legal calls like that do happen, my response is pretty much the same. It's not illegal to work at a shitty department. And believe all of us, there's a lot of departments in Texas that are hiring right now. So if you're not happy, and if you're really the sole person that's not happy at the agency and you're having some problems, don't be afraid to venture out there and look at other departments that are better fit for you, that are a better fit for your personality, your better work ethic. Look at Plano PD's pay scale isn't shabby. But if you work at other departments,
that's what I've heard.
But don't be afraid to venture out there and find a department that's a better fit for you.
They're all hiring.
They're all hiring.
And Clint, that was actually a great segue. If I can grab the rudder for a second.
That's why I did that for you, please, sir.
Slow down, you idiot. So where I got to
Well,
actually
I
meet.
feel like you were saying that to me. Was it? We made eye contact for a
Did it
moment.
did it come through?
It did. I got it. It's received, sir.
Yeah.
Where I actually got to meet Keith was at his Beyond the Cones class in Fort Worth in probably 2013.
Could have been, yeah.
So, yeah, 10 years ago. But a phenomenal class, one that I wound up going to the trainer and have instructed that at my department and other places. But one of the things I wanted to add on to that is I had already told you he's a phenomenal instructor, but I don't think you're going to find anybody more passionate about trying to save officers' lives than the man sitting next to you.
And what was the title of the class? It sounded like you said Beyond the Cone.
Beyond the Cones.
Cones. Gotcha.
You know, you can tie this in with leadership. When I became a sergeant, of course, I'd been an FTO, trained many rookies. On the SWAT team, you know, we did training all the time, and we self-trained and we trained with each other. So I had a knack for not only wanting to be a trainer, but doing a good job at it. Yeah. When I became a sergeant, I took the responsibility of making sure, like a coach, my troops, my people, had the best training they could get. And sometimes you have to do it on your own. And that's what a sergeant should be doing, is evaluating their people. I mean, one night a narcotics sergeant called me and says, I need 2 of your best people for a takedown. And I looked at the roll call, and this isn't a slam to the police department, but I looked at the roll call and the guys were working that day. I told him, I said, his name is JJ. I said, JJ, can you make that traffic stop on another division? Because I don't really have 2 of the best for what you're wanting to do. And that was a slide on me. I should have spent more time training. But that's what leaders do, is they make sure, just like a coach would, make sure your people have the right equipment, the right training, the right mindset. And so that segued into me wanting to be like the trainer. I go back to when I started teaching the Beyond the Cones, but I taught PVOC, which a lot of people call it EVOC, police driving, back in the late 90s. And if I can tell you this part of it, I get car sick real easy. And I told the head trainer was a guy named Corporal Navarro. And I told him, he said, well, I want you to do this for me, you know, train these rookies on this track. And I told him, I said, I don't know if I can do that, because going around the track makes me sick sitting in the right-hand seat. He said, oh, no, you'll be fine. Well, about 2 laps, I can tell you, I threw up milk duds I'd eaten in the 3rd grade. And I told him, I cannot do that.
It's miserable.
Oh, my God. I remember those. That's why I say I remember those milk duds at a movie theater. Anyways, fast forward. I told him, maybe you ought to let me teach the classroom part of EVOC, which nobody wanted to do. Yeah. And that was my future of, and I say Beyond the Cones, and teaching, which is a horrible course called the National Safety Council's Defensive Driving. It's just horrible for police officers.
Almost went to sleep
and probably for the instructor. I hate getting like an itinerary like that. And like, how the hell am I going to teach this? But with your experience,
that's true. And I did the first one by the book. And we had a corporal named Reardon. He was retiring. He said, Keith, you do this. He says, he said, you're funny. You make fun of people. You do things. You do great. And I did the first one, and I thought, oh, I'll never do this again. This was horrible. All your peers are looking at you. And our classes had 50 to 100 people in it. It was mass. And I thought, I cannot do this. Well, in Dallas, we had lost at that time 27 officers to driving. Now, we're going back into the 30s and 20s. So there was a lot of police officers our own department had that had died driving. Yeah. So I built a video on those officers. Lasted about 8, 9, 10 minutes of each one. And then I started looking on the internet, which was at that time in the late 90s was coming, to fruition. And I realized, holy mackerel, it's not just Dallas police who have lost officers dying in car crashes. And we always know about the ones who get shot and killed. Right. Nobody talks about the ones with the steering wheel in their hand. Yeah. And when I found out how many across the United States, my eyes opened up, and I said, oh, we've got to do something.
Well, kudos to you for doing that, man, because that's amazing, honestly, because I recognize it now probably because of the history and the foundation you had built back then, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that's one thing that I was always taught by a sergeant was that, we're all prepared to wear bulletproof vests the minute you walk out the door. But then you pull up at a call, and the stupid sons of bitches that we work with are not wearing a seatbelt. And you're like, what the hell are you doing? So kudos to you for recognizing that, because that is a huge safety situation that currently law enforcement just don't want to face, and they don't want to look at.
It's still there.
Yeah.
And I did want to bring something up if Keith remembers this. I took over as president late July 2017. There was a deputy killed, Jason Fan of Yoakum County, on August 5th, 2017. And for whatever reason, Keith and I were on the phone, and we were talking about it because the information at the time is that he was ejected, which will tell you he's not wearing a seatbelt. So we were discussing that. And I remember the phone call like it was yesterday. I remember where I was in my living room, and he goes, if only somebody on this phone had the platform to influence people, maybe they should take it. So I kicked that around for a little while, and my first article as president in the In-Service magazine was about basically the tenets of below 100, with a strong emphasis on wearing seatbelts.
And below 100 literally came from Dallas Police. Now, a group of about 5 officers around the country, some great guys, Travis Yates, who does law officer, had a conference call as to what are we going to do, how are we going to get these line of deaths down. And I told Travis, I said, why don't you come to Dallas and see a class that we do? And I did it in the evening time. I was a training sergeant at the academy, called Risk, Responsibilities, and the Roadway. So Travis and his trainers from Tulsa, Oklahoma, came down, watched the class, and literally said, brother, he says that quite a bit, brother. He said, brother, this is what we're going to do. And that's where below 100, because we had that video of Michael Vaughn that hit the kid on the bicycle, which was a foundation of, changing your driving habits. And so below 100 incorporated those slides, I'd say, from Dallas Police into the program that they started nationally. And of course I trained with them for a few times, but I was training with Calibre Press, which conflicted with the Beyond the Cones class that they were selling.
Well, and kudos for your passion for that, because trying to talk about safety and driving to 21 and 22-year-olds that are invincible, and I'm just telling that because I know 21 years old, 22 years old, when I was in Garland, I was invincible. And every call you should drive 130 to, because you should.
Yeah.
And trying to get that through thick-headed young folks like myself, that's a tall task. I mean, it's like trying to sell life insurance to a 4-year-old. They don't care, it's not needed, and it doesn't pertain to me.
And you can't put a poster on the wall and expect officers to pass it as they're going to work that says wear your seatbelt and think that's going to have some impact. You can't do that. I always like to tell the story that I had a chief that was in my driving class, and I was talking about seatbelts and officers not wearing seatbelts, and it's true. They don't. Nationally, they don't. And he spoke up and he said, no, I don't think we have a problem here in Dallas Police. And of course, he was a chief. I wasn't going to correct him in front of all of his peers, people. And after the class, when I'm packing up my computer and everything, 2 or 3 officers that I didn't even know, rookies, young officers, I didn't, we had 3,500 officers, I didn't know who they were, came up and said, literally, you let that chief say bullshit, that was not true. We work out there and we know officers are not wearing their seatbelts, so keep teaching that and disregard what he said. Of course, I wouldn't confront the chief on that, but that's because how many chiefs drive around looking at officers who are wearing seatbelts compared to how many officers are working 2-man with a partner who's not wearing a seatbelt?
Yeah.
So it's still a problem.
Yeah.
And leadership comes up again here. And a while ago, somebody brought up, and you brought up when you were on SWAT, you would go out and try and mentor patrol guys that may be on scene and visit with them, and chiefs trying to properly lead. And it's funny that leadership comes up in this, because these problems generally are a reflection of the top.
Yes.
And once there's buy-in at the top, generally the culture changes down below. I spent Thanksgiving weekend taking calls from a couple agencies that are having issues with chiefs, and a couple of them are gypsy chiefs that it's like whack-a-mole. We get them knocked down and they pop up at the next agency two miles over, and it's always failed leadership, and it's always the huge narcissist leaders that never build anyone and never begin to build the leader that can replace them. And when somebody mentioned a while ago, one of you guys mentioned a while ago about preparing everybody that's behind you, man, that's the onus on a supervisor.
Yeah.
That's the onus when you're the senior guy on your shift. You might as well be an OIC. You should be trying to mentor those folks when you're a sergeant, when you're a lieutenant. I had a chief a couple of years ago tell me, yeah, I'm about to retire and I've got 4 assistant chiefs, and not one of those idiots will be the next one. And he said it braggingly, like he's the only man in the world that can be the chief. And I'm thinking, you just slammed yourself because you were so arrogant. You were too arrogant.
Yep.
Because what you should be saying is, I'm about to retire, and I got 4 people that are so freaking prepared, trained, and qualified. I don't even know who to pick because there's 4 of them that could fill my shoes immediately.
Yeah.
But it always comes back to leadership.
It does.
You got an assistant chief standing up, BS in your class. He probably went and got in his car and drove home with no seatbelt on. And, man, it's just so important, and it comes up in every episode.
Yep.
Sorry, I sidetracked us.
No, I was going to say what I'm hoping for is when I first started, there were plenty of officers that didn't wear a vest. And what I'm hoping is if we stay on this, if we keep preaching this, that it will become the norm, like wearing a vest.
Yeah.
Because if you need that seatbelt off to win a foot chase, you weren't going to win it anyway. Let's be honest.
Well, the culture changed at Garland, and I never thought it would. But after I'd been on a couple of years, nobody wore a seatbelt. And after I'd been on a couple of years, the culture changed that, once you get checked, you're in the area, you're 500 yards from being on the street or whatever, clicking it off. And I saw across, and I never thought it would change because we were too cool and too tough. We would never need a seatbelt. I think cultures can change, but it takes leadership. And I don't know that it was our chief that was intentional about it. I think it was the non-rank leaders, the people that actually kind of ran, that caused that change. But it takes buy-in from somebody, and it's always a reflection. Every organization, even civilian organizations, are a reflection of the top.
Yes.
And it takes buy-in for that and somebody to set that example. And it's same with like PTS. Mm. There's brave people now that'll stand up and scream about it. Well, now people are like, oh, shit, that guy's a badass. And if he'll stand up and say it's okay to not be, I'll talk about it now. But it took some people brave enough to start that shift. And God forbid, that's the easy one. Wear your freaking seatbelt.
When I was the FTO sergeant, I would preach it to the FTOs. You better be drilling this in these kids. The seatbelt will save your life. Because when I got the chance to teach the class, there's always that one guy that knew somebody that if they had been wearing their seatbelt, they would have been killed. And I was like, I never have been able to track this guy down. Mm-mm. Very elusive. And
we had so many videos, and I know you taught the class. Ann Beidel, her son was killed in Las Vegas, and she came to Georgetown and gave a presentation during my class for about 20 minutes, and Las Vegas did a video of her saying it's such a simple thing. Had her son only wore his seatbelt, the other officer survived the crash of the car. Anyway, it's a long story, but it is such a simple thing that it's sad that we're still preaching wear a seatbelt in 2023. I mean, it's been a law since, about 1988?
Governor Mark White.
Yeah. So
well, and if somebody ever produces the anecdotal, if he'd have had a seatbelt on, it'd have killed him when he went off the bridge and into the Gulf of Mexico. For whatever one example somebody can find, how many tens of thousands of them outweigh that? So the one anomaly that the UFO, if he would have had it on when the UFO struck his car, there's 10,000 examples of why somebody didn't get ejected or didn't get whatever injury would have occurred.
I agree.
Yep.
You've got some other things that you wanted to throw at Keith.
I did. Yeah. This is where the. Do you have a ticker sound?
If you have children listening at home, this is the time to.
Yeah, I can add it in there.
Yeah, make it sound like 60 minutes because this is where we're gonna get to hard hitting questions. That always made me sad as a kid because I knew the weekend was over when I heard the 60-minute ticker. Keith, what would you say? What are you most proud of from your career?
Wow, that's a that's a deep question. I think I cared deeply about the people that not only did I work for, but worked for me. And I was hesitant of saying, but people who work for me, because literally, you know the saying, I worked for them. I mean, that was true. There's no question, as a Dallas police officer, we've lost a lot of officers. And it literally, when I say it, breaks my heart every time I talk about it. Gary McCarthy I was his class advisor. There were 3 of us in the hospital when he died. We watched them crack his chest open. And I had this conversation with the other 2 officers when we had a reunion on their 20-year, and it's been, well, they started in 1985, so 2005. And all 3 of us literally stood there and cried, remembering that night. Kevin James, his anniversary was 2 days ago. One of the greatest kids. We did a canoe trip for 25 years. They're still doing it. That we started in SWAT, that went to Northwest. And anyways, a long story. So some years we had up to 50 people that went on this canoe trip up to Arkansas. Kevin, of course, as a rookie, went first 8 years till he was killed. The night he
Kevin James skeet shoot now, the clay shoot.
Yeah. What a great kid. I was a sergeant when he first started. I'll also say his partner, Scott Sayers, just got hired from the district attorney up in Collin County to be the DA investigator. He called me, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, after his interview when he was told he got the job. And literally, he was so excited. And I've told everybody this story. As his sergeant when he first started, this kid had so much enthusiasm. It was just crazy.
He still does.
He still does. And our office at Northwest, where the sergeants were, I'd hear him come in the office, and I'm joking when I say this, but there's some truth to it. I'd have to hide from him. He was just so excited. Sergeant, you're not going to believe when you were gone for 2 days, and they would go over every single call. And I just love this kid. And anyways, when he got the job, he said I was the 3rd person he called. His mother, his wife, and me.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty high up there, okay?
Yeah, wow.
And, of course, he's been in homicide forever now, and they're going to lose a great detective and great guy. And
he'll be working with Bill Worski, who's great people.
Great. So as a going back to your question, the greatest thing is seeing kids like this, saying kids, people that worked for you achieve incredible success. As a mentor, that you just can't find anything better than that feeling. I get goosebumps just even telling you how wonderful that is. And I know I'm getting older. I've got 3 sons that are all 3 great, have done great things in business. I mean, they're very successful. And I'm very proud of them. I'm also equally as proud of those kids who worked around me, for me, attained rank, and have done great things.
That's awesome.
I got one. I got 2. Okay. What's Keith's very best day ever and Keith's worst day ever?
Well, I have too many worst days. Just getting that phone call, those are, you can't, whether it was Kevin James, whether those are bad days. There's no question about that. We don't want to live those again, but that phone call ringing is still, thank goodness we don't have home phones anymore, right? I don't know if I can quantify what would be my best day. There are so many of them. I want to say that even when I was working in places that were not great places to work, working for lieutenants and chiefs that were horrible, I still enjoyed going to work. I worked at Southwest for 2 years, transferred out of there. The officers were fantastic. The administration was horrible. But I still enjoyed every single day going to work because I know they needed that buffer in between. So I guess I have thousands and thousands of great days.
That's a good problem to have.
I'm retired now, and I literally miss. I miss the daily discipline, the daily going roll call. When I made sergeant, I made it a goal. And I'm going to be critical of the management when I worked in Irving. It seemed like every roll call was about what you couldn't do, what you shouldn't do, what you couldn't do, who was doing things wrong. It was all negative. And I would sit in those roll calls, and I made this commitment. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to chew out a group of people, for what one person did. I'm not going to
shotgun approach.
Yeah. If somebody does something wrong, I'll tell them later. Very seldom did I ever have to say, but there were times that you had to say, look, the dispatchers are watching what you're doing. You might want to quit doing certain things. But I made it a goal to be that positive when you come to work, because we've had guys, you guys know this, that go out in the field and don't go home. You don't want to be that person that was a horse's ass at 3 o'clock roll call.
Well, it's a great point. I worked for a chief once, and patrol saw him one time a year to go down and tell him that, hey, no raises this year, insurance went up, good to see you guys. Yeah. And he couldn't figure out why the troops didn't support him and why things weren't going well. And I was like, they literally see you one time a year. You go down there to tell them the sky's falling, you're screwed, you're not getting a raise, and your insurance is going up. Appreciate you.
Or they got in trouble.
Yeah.
That's the only other time they would see him.
Yeah, and I'm like,
you guys are 143.
Yeah. Well, but why would you think they love you or respect you? They see you one time a year to tell them that they're saying it's been another bad year for you.
Yeah.
So we got time for one more?
Yeah, get after it. I invaded with mine. Go ahead.
No. All good stuff. So tell us about implementing reality-based training at Dallas PD, and what kind of roadblocks did you go up against, and how did you eventually get buy-in for it?
Believe it or not, I don't think we got roadblocks. It took some creative people to get. Well, we had resources. We got I think it was about $80,000 from the Caruth Police Foundation, or the Caruth family, which was outstanding. We went shopping, cameras. We got everything you need for reality-based training. We had the Naval Air Station. We had a facility that was absolutely phenomenal. The problem with the first year, and I had great. I was a sergeant. Had some great trainers that worked for me. And unfortunately, the first time we did this, the first series of getting all 3,500 officers through it, it was more of a wake-up call. So the scenarios were they were quick, and it was almost like, well, you did good, you need to do better. That was about it. But it evolved into more realistic training. Not every call is a shooting call. Not every time you confront somebody. So there was a lot of different type of scenarios where they had to talk. They had to be police officers, reality. And I don't think officers ever left the training saying something to the effect of, "Oh, that wasn't real." It was real. I'll tell you this short story. I had a female officer one time that was in a shooting in the reality-based training. She called me later that evening, and she was still upset. She said, "I've never been in a shooting. I cannot get over what happened today," because she obviously used deadly force. She did a great job.
Yeah.
But she went through a shooting. It just wasn't real. But to her, it was real. I mean, you know what I mean? It was
right.
The scenario was so realistic. That was the value of realistic-based training, and why every department isn't doing it every quarter. I mean, because in SWAT we did it all the time. Why don't patrol officers get that training every single 3 months? But
and if you can insert somebody in the most realistic situation they're going to be involved in, and allow those mistakes to occur in practice.
Yes.
So God forbid they don't happen in the game. Mm-hmm. Whether people's feelings get hurt going through reality-based training or not, it's insane to not do that. Because if you care about your people, that's the best training. It's the best juice for the squeeze that you're going to get to put somebody in situations to see how they handle themselves.
But the key is you've got to have the right coaches. I use that word, trainers, sure. Coaches. You can't have somebody who just tells somebody they did wrong. Yep. You've got to lead your students down the path of making decisions to self-realize what they did right, what they did wrong. That's the key. So to me, it's a coaching experience.
But it also takes leaders that are willing to go out on a limb to get the funding for it, because right now law enforcement, the funding for training is probably not there because of the manpower and so forth. But you've got to have leaders that just don't want to put that on a resume. For instance, like let's just say a sheriff in East Texas that wants to put that on a resume builder to use that platform. Well, you have to devote yourself and devote your people to that. But it takes leadership in order to get the buy-in.
Leadership when it comes to training is almost non-existent in law enforcement, and that's a shame. One of the classes, and I think James may have gone to it, was my tactical leader class that I did about sergeants making decisions in critical incidents. Yep. And if I would say as a supervisor in Dallas, you had many opportunities to succeed or fail. and you learn quite a bit. And that was great for the police department because it was busy all the time. A lot of departments don't have that ability to teach as you go along. But we really have no sergeant classes. I know there's leadership classes,
Right.
but actually, how do you actually manage people? And what tools can you give somebody in a training, an 8-hour seminar, that they can leave that seminar with a tool that they can actually use, other than some theory about what Colin Powell's, 22 irrefutable lessons. I mean, those are all good books to read, but how do you apply those things to actual people?
I've never understood that. I'm just asking you guys, out of law enforcement, how many people of law enforcement, both men and women, do you think participated in some type of sports growing up as children? I would comfortably say 90 to 95%. Wouldn't you guys say that?
I would think so.
And so what blows me away, right, is that growing up as kids, we've all played football, baseball, soccer. We don't hesitate on going to practice and giving 100% during practices of sports. And so when you get backlash from patrol officers or CID guys about going through realistic training,
Yeah.
I don't understand the ideology behind, okay, so for a sporting event where you cannot lose your life for the most part, we're not going to question that and go into it without hesitation. But with reality-based law enforcement training where there's hesitation or resistance there, I don't understand that mind process, that thinking behind that.
If there's resistance, it's because of the way it's administered. I had many officers that would come by my office and say, "Hey, Keith, can I just be a suspect today?" Or, I got bad knees, and older officers, and I, is there any way I can get out of this training? And of course, I wouldn't do it naturally. At the end of the day, they'd come back and they'd say, "That was the best stuff I've ever gone through." And I believe it was because the right people were doing the training. And that's one good thing that we had was the right people. How you coach somebody is pretty important. You can't just tell them they did wrong. You got to cops are, they're type A personality, and you got to smooth into it and be gifted at that, if you want to say.
And I think in the past there was a style of any scenario training where, like, even on interview boards, you're always set up to fail. Mm-hmm. And Tmpa puts on a basic response survival training, BURST. It's our reality-based training, simulations training. And one of the things when the guys were developing it, and I'm super proud of our class, is not every scenario is a gunfight.
Right.
Never will we put you in a situation where it's aha, got you. We set you up to look like an idiot. And when we take that class on the road to places, you can see it every time. The first hour, they're very tentative of, okay, here's the game where the freaking boogeyman's going to jump out with a car bomb or some BS that's not realistic so I can look like an idiot. And when we leave, it's always the same deal. Holy shit, that was the most realistic thing I've been through, and the sincere value that you can tell people take away from it when you set them up properly to succeed, or when they fail, you didn't fail, you're learning.
Right.
We didn't lose, we learned. Let's learn how. And a couple times we've had people get really emotional during the class or upset, and I'm like, I'd rather you do this today than be in a shooting tomorrow and this occur. This is just practice.
Yeah.
The game is someday. Hopefully you're not ever in the game. But I think it's super important of how that is managed. In the old style from 20 years ago, scenarios where you were set up to look like an idiot, or that everybody could laugh at you, or that you got you failed, or there was the big aha got you where you were in a no-win. And I really appreciate with the reality-based training, most people that are doing it, I think it's about as effective as any simulator or as anything. You can only stand in front of a screen for so long and make noises, and I love that you brought that to Dallas.
I would ask in my sergeant's class, what do you think the average police officer skill level is? On a 1 to 5, what do you think? And most people would say, probably a 4. And I'm going to be honest, it's nowhere close to a 4. So taking that into consideration and being not just a trainer, so I would see, the first 2 years, we had 3,500 officers go through our reality-based training. Wow. 3,500. I got to see where mistakes are being made. And to say, I've watched officers try to put a magazine and a pistol where there was already one in it. It doesn't work. It won't go. We've tried it many times. And that just, when you start to see where the talent is, when narcotics guys and SWAT guys would come through our reality-based training, they aced it. They were really good because they were getting training all the time. Certain patrol guys, depending on where they work, you could almost pick the guys who work southeast, southwest, the crime fighters. Then I'll get hit for this, but you could pick the guys who work north central.
Answering burglar alarms.
Yeah, it's just they don't do felony stops. Southeast, you're doing them every day. In some, that's exaggeration, but you're doing them all the time. You get good at things. Repetition makes you skillful, and so that training gives you repetition.
Yeah.
In with budgets tight, people getting range time is less and less. People willing to spend for ammunition, and you just nailed it. Police work is a diminishing skill set, whether it's on the range, whether it's your ability to operate your gear, muscle memory, and being repetitive about something it's a diminishing skill. And you don't mess with your gear for a while, and your pistol's rusted into your holster, and you have all these issues in the middle of the game's not the time to figure out that there's a deficiency that I haven't done in 2 years now. And reality-based training, again, continues to hone that.
Force Science is a great group of knowledgeable people. But one thing you learn from Force Science is humans make mistakes. And once you know that we do, and you agree to that, then we can fix those mistakes, or we can try. In a small city, you can find an abandoned building somewhere and do a burglary search.
Yeah.
You can get a buddy, you can clear weapons and do it safe. You can get a buddy that's inside the building, and they're not expecting a burglar to actually be in the building, but there is one in there, and make it realistic. There's so much you can do as a supervisor or as an FTO that we're not taking advantage of. Slow times.
Yep.
So
Agreed.
let me ask you this real quick. Do you enjoy being wrong?
Enjoy being wrong?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because he's wrong about the bagpipes, by the way.
Oh.
he's a hater on those.
No, I'm telling you, I have bad memories of people, of the sound of those bagpipes, because I've never been to a concert where they played really neat songs, some Beatles favorites and maybe even some Barry Manilow. You just never know what they might come up with. It's always...
I'll send you some iTunes, because funny enough, Paul McCartney actually has a song.
Okay.
With bagpipes.
Yeah.
I'll be damned.
Mole of Kintyre.
I made one statement in that conference, and I said, I just hate bagpipes because they remind me of police funerals, and they do. And so ever since, and so then I see him in a skirt, and then I think, well, I don't know, maybe it's not that bad after all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you got anything else?
No, that was the one thing I wanted to shoehorn in there.
Well, me and Clint both have been wanting to get you on for a while, so thank you for making the drive down.
Oh, thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely.
It's been a blast.
Clint, you got anything else?
No, once I saw his calves that first time, I knew I wanted to spend some time with him.
Well, we typically end each episode with 3 rapid-fire questions.
Okay.
I've got faith because you and Bab are friends, so we're going to see about this. Your favorite line from a police movie or favorite police movie, favorite cop car, and favorite adult beverage.
Well, let me start with the beverage. I would almost have to go with the just a Coors beer, just something really simple. Although I do like Flight now. I've kind of changed to Flight because it's unique, and I couldn't find it forever.
I tried that at the fair, and it almost tastes like beer.
Yeah. But at my age, I can drink more of them and hang with the big dogs.
There you go.
Okay, so police car. I loved the Torino. Now, I had a 1970 Torino when I was, my second car, but it wasn't nowhere close to the Starsky and Hutch. But the Starsky and Hutch and the police car, I love the Torinos. That's going way back that nobody would know anything about.
Automatic or 3 on the tree?
Automatic.
Automatic?
Let's just be real. Even though, but yeah, it'd have to be an automatic as a police car.
Oh, some of them were 3 on the trees.
Were they really?
Yep.
Yeah, I never saw one of those.
Yep. Dad said that his first one was 3 on the tree, and when you would go in to get something to eat, they would take wire off the newspaper bundles and put it around the clutch and then over the horn. So when a rookie would get in and push the clutch to start the car, it would turn the horn, send the horn off, and alert everybody that the new rookie was around.
Somebody should write a book on things cops have done to each other.
Oh, yes.
That are felonies to begin with.
Yeah.
That's
brutal.
What's your favorite police movie? Line from a police movie.
You know, I watched this show, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. Brooklyn 7-4. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
It was back in the 90s. There's only 10 episodes. And it was a great series that you can't find anywhere. I actually bought the box set. But as far as an actual line in there, and I tell you, I admired the sergeant. And the very first episode, I even used it in my class. There's about 6-7 minutes of the very first episode where a police officer gets shot and killed. And one gets shot in the back, and he dies. Just the whole dynamics. The sergeant does a fantastic job. They bring this bad guy in that was killing people into the station, and one officer's accused of roughing him up, which he didn't do. It's just a fantastic, and it goes from there. That would have to be my favorite all-time show.
I'm going to check that one out. I've never heard of that one.
So if you're a listener or watcher and you know where we can find the Brooklyn 7-4 or Brooklyn 7-5, I can't remember, but I remember. Post down below if you know where we can find it, Hulu or somewhere, if you know where we can find that.
Hey, you know who's in that show too is Bosch.
I like Bosch.
Yeah, whatever. I can't think of his name right off the hand.
I can't either.
But he's the guy that is accused of roughing up the prisoner, which he deserved to be roughed up. Let's just put it that way. For the movie.
I'm going to check that out after tonight whenever me and my wife are hanging out. She loves her some Bosch.
Yeah.
So I didn't set him up for that question. For any of the questions. I didn't give him any of that.
Okay, good.
But I was a little nervous that he may go with the wrong choice, which is the Crown Victoria. Because he did point out when he was teaching at the conference, he pointed out to me, he goes, "Hey, watch this. That's the DPA president that just jumped through the back window of that car," which gives a shout out to Mike Motta because he is retiring at the end of the year.
Was that not a great video?
That's a great video.
It's been shown all over the world in some parts of Texas.
Do you have it? Or they can.
I will send it to him.
I'll have to get that.
With music.
I'd love to see that.
Did I put the music to it?
I don't recall.
It's a Boots Randolph saxophone. When you get it, you'll love it. We've given Mike such a hard time about that, but he literally dives in the window of a stolen car with 4 occupants. It's not police.
Head first or feet first?
Head first.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, I got to get that.
Nothing but net clears he clears through?
You know, he's not a big guy. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So he clears all the way through?
I thought it was a Crown Vic that he jumped into.
I'm not really sure what car he jumped.
Excuse me, not Crown Vic, Caprice. For some reason, that was the memory I had of him. I thought it was a Caprice that he dove head first into.
It's big. Okay.
Well, I almost forgot. Let's go ahead and give you your 3 questions. Favorite climb from a cop movie, favorite police vehicle, and favorite adult beverage. James Babb.
Man, I feel kind of weird because I don't think anybody has mentioned the Gran Torino, the Brooklyn 7-4, and mine are going to be pretty trite.
No one's ever mentioned Flight either, by the way.
Good point.
Yeah.
For me, I'm a peacock. You got to let me fly.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's just that is one of my favorite movies.
Very popular movie on here. That movie has come up a lot.
Yeah, and I hate to be trite like that, but that's such a great movie.
It is.
And of course, as I've sent you the videos of the one remaining Crown Vic that we have in our fleet, that is in my unit because it's the choose your ride now. So we drop it at different places, but I sent you guys some pretty sweet.
Oh, yeah. So Crown Vic is your favorite.
Oh yeah, some pretty sweet engine revving video.
Yes.
And I'm a bourbon guy.
Any particular one?
I really like Weller. I would love any of the listening audience out there. If you got the lead on a Weller Foolproof at MSRP, because they get a little crazy, drop that in the comments. I'll be looking.
On a rock, neat.
Neat. Yeah, if you can't drink it neat, it's not a good bourbon.
Gotcha.
Well, man, this about wraps it up. I'm 1 for 2 today, so I can live with that. And we're like 1 in 10 for the Caprices. Ken Gardner and you are about the only ones that I think that.
Well, we're the only ones experienced enough to have driven them. Everybody else was too young.
Oh no, sir! I drove them. The body roll on those things was ridiculous. Now I will give you flat out straight line speed, great, but cornering they were
Trash.
terrible.
At 154 miles an hour, who cares about body roll? I mean, it's really doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah,
154.
Hey, can I tell you that I'm in one of those LT engines? I chased a car. This was back in '90, probably 5, all the way to Oklahoma. It was totally against policy. Louisville police were chasing just a speeder, and I was a sergeant, and I got on about Walnut Hill going south. We went all through Dallas. We went over to Arlington. We went north on 360. We went all the way back up through Louisville, all the way up 35, all the way into Oklahoma. The helicopter was involved. I don't know how many cars were behind me, and I was the supervisor of the chase. But this is the best part of it, and I love this. She was a chief. Jill Muncie was our chief. She was a duty chief that night, and I got a phone call. We had those cradle phones in the car, and the dispatcher gave the chief my phone call because we were going to Oklahoma, and I didn't answer the phone.
At the casinos, sorry about that.
The reason I didn't answer the phone because I didn't have a legitimate answer for what the hell I was chasing this car for into Oklahoma. It had already busted through like stop sticks, which I hate, stop sticks. It was just crazy. But when we got to Oklahoma, I knew that we only had speeding, and evading arrest, so we couldn't chase it anymore. But it ended up in Ardmore, and in Ardmore they set up a roadblock. And it busted through, hit cars, put one officer in the hospital. They chased it into the city, arrested both of the suspects. They were in a big dually truck that was stolen out of Las Vegas, and drug charges. When I say the end justified the means, well, I finally answered the phone. On the way back. But first I called my wife, and I'd only been a sergeant for like less than a year. I called my wife and I said, "You're not going to believe this. This is 1 o'clock in the morning. I just chased the car to Oklahoma and I'm in deep shit." I said, "I'm on the way back to the station." And I said, "I'm not answering the phone." So I hung it up, and it kept ringing. So I just said, "Well, screw it." So I answered it. It was one of the officers, and unfortunately he's dead now. And we call him Filthy Francis. He says, "Sarge, we stayed at the station. We listened to that whole thing, even if we're off duty." He said, "You're in a lot of trouble, right?" Said, "Shut up, Francis." So I came back, and our chief at my station was Danny Garcia. I love him to death. And the sergeant at the station called me and says, "Keith, take your time. Chief Garcia's here, and he is pissed." And so, of course, I drove the speed limit coming back, and I go in his office, and I guess I could say this. Chief Garcia uses GD quite a bit, okay? And when I went in, and he started up with the GDs, and I guess somewhere and he said, "Well, what makes you even think you're something like, why did you do this?" And I said, "But the end, I already called Ardmore, so I knew the end. That was over 10 minutes after we came back to Dallas." As a matter of fact, when we stopped and the helicopter, went back, they had to land outside of a Stuckey's somewhere near Denton and bring a fuel truck up to it because it was out of fuel. That's a real deal. That cost a lot of money to the city. But anyways, there were probably 12.5 squad cars. Now, I was in the front, so I have no idea who
You're in
these
the
people
front
were.
because you were in a Caprice.
Because I'm in a Caprice, and I'm the sergeant.
Yes.
And they knew they were in deep shit if they passed me. So, because I'm the sergeant. And all these officers start coming up, they're high-fiving. And I said, I don't, because, it's a big city. I don't know who the hell this is before AVL, okay? I don't know who the hell you guys are, but you need to get the hell out of here now. So anyways, I told Chief Garcia, I said, but Chief, the end justified the means. And I think I got about 5 GDs at that. And I told that story when he became chief in Phoenix too. And I was teaching all the sheriffs and chiefs in Arizona. And I started with that story and he had just made the chief, like 3 months earlier or something like that. But I think the world of him. So
that's awesome.
Hey, I got a white copy, which in Dallas is nothing. It's like goes off 3 years, and it was because I didn't answer the phone. because the policy wasn't written very strictly. It is now. That's with my picture right next to it, of course. But that's why that's the only trouble I got in is because I was disrespectful to the chief by not answering the phone.
That's good.
Got to find something to write him up for.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was and if I'd have known that was going to be over in Ardmore and I was only going to get a white copy, I'd have been at the end of that chase.
That's good shit.
Got your money's worth.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, this about wraps it up. You got anything else?
I got nothing. El Presidente.
Again, thank you guys for having me. I enjoyed it. Hopefully, I've provided you a quality guest.
Yes.
Quality.
And thank you for making the short trip. Now that you live in Georgetown, making the short trip down. We've really enjoyed having you on. And
Georgetown, Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Not Kentucky for anybody out there wondering. But
Great.
I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
Well, this about wraps it up. We're getting to the holiday season. You guys stay safe. I hope you guys have great holidays and had a great Thanksgiving. Take care. God bless you. And as always, may God bless Texas. We're out.